Welcome to The Real Math of Business with Alena Bennett, where you plus this podcast equals better decisions. I'm Alena Bennett, speaker, author, and leadership experts. I work with chief executive officers and chief financial officers really to help them create universally investable companies where people serve people and the math just works. This week, I am chatting with the amazing Jason McDougall, but first, here is my thought-provoking question. This is inspired by the school holidays, which we're still in, to be perfectly honest, with the girls. And I decided, against maybe my better judgment, to let them to dye their hair. Like to not just dye their hair, but one of them wanted to dye their hair blue and one of them wanted to dye their hair pink. This is definitely not something that was in my parenting plan. It is definitely not something that was in my parenting plan for, 12 and 13-year-old girls. But to be honest with you, at the end of last term or the end of last year, I just thought, I just got to pick my battles here. And you know what? I'm just going to break a few rules. Summer holidays is a long period of time. They can get their hair dyed. It will make them happy. They can experiment. They can go through the pain of having to dye it back for school, because they're certainly not allowed any coloured dyed hair for school. So they can learn that lesson about maintenance and the impact of what happens when you bleach your hair, just in streaks, not their whole head of hair. But for me, quite honestly, so my girls are walking around with blue and pink hair, and I was like, oh, that's some nice holiday hair. And I'm like, you know what? It's fine. It doesn't float my boat particularly, but it's fine. But you know what? I had the end of last term, I was literally like, I'm just going to pick my battles. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm so glad I did. I kind of go back to my sort of, maybe I'll say January 2025 uptight self, where I would have been like, no, there's no way my children are walking around with pink and blue hair over the school holidays. I don't care that you can dye it back. And I probably would have got on a little bit of my high horse a little bit about it. My girls don't do that. The fact is, it's really not that big a deal. And so, again, sort of from a place of surrender, I broke my own rules. I let them do it. And it's been really fun. I've noticed that my eldest has absolutely loved having blue hair. When people comment on it, she really lights up. And, I kind of feel like this was an important expression of who she was. And then my youngest, who just loves, her long hair, she just loves, show poning around with her pink hair. And we got to go to the Sydney Sixers game, which is a cricket game, a cricket team in Sydney. We went to the Big Bash in December, and she had pink hair for this, and their colours are pink, right? And so she went there and she was on camera all the time and she was loving it because of her pink hair. So I broke my own rules against my better judgment. And you know what? I think it's been worth it. I'm like, Alena, what were you so stressed up about? Why were you so uptight about this dumb little thing? And I know that there'll be people listening going, wow, Alena, you really are uptight. My thought-provoking question to you, though, as a result of sharing this story, is what is the rule that you have set for yourself that you are going to break that may just actually lead to a better outcome, some really great learning, and hey, some more fun? So what rule are you going to break this year? I would love to hear. And now to our chat with Jason McDougall. Well, welcome. And it's an absolute pleasure to welcome my friend Jason McDougall to the podcast today. Welcome, Jason.
Hello. Thank you very much.
Jason, let me do a quick intro on you. Jason McDougall is a leadership coach, mentor, and speaker passionate about helping people unlock their God-given potential and lead with purpose. Raised in Western Sydney in a family of modest means, Jason's faith has became the steady foundation that continues to shape his life and work. Beginning his career in a trade before moving into the corporate world, Jason gained diverse experiences across industries and witnessed firsthand how leadership styles can make or break teams and cultures. Over time, he discovered the powerful intersection of faith and business, seeing how biblical principles and godly wisdom can transform leaders and organizations alike. Today, Jason equips others to grow in their leadership, reach their goals, and build lives marked by peace, fulfillment, and vision. Through coaching and speaking, he inspires audiences to find clarity, courage, and direction, empowering them to thrive both personally and professionally. Wow. Jason, when we met and started working together however many years ago now. Do you remember how many years ago that was?
Was it just
3,
up
4 years
3 or 4 years ago? Yeah.
Yeah. Can like, I'm I'm reading those words going like, I'm reading those words now, in 2026 going, "That's the obvious career journey for you." It's
Yeah.
so obvious.
Yeah.
But when we first met 4 years ago, like, tell
I never would have put that on a piece of paper and said that about myself, right? In fact, I think the first thing that we ever said was, "I'm the apprentice in the room." Remember that very first
I
boardroom that we
totally
walked
remember
into?
that.
It was, "I'm the apprentice, everyone else knows more," because I doubted everything about myself. Whereas now, looking back, the journey that we've been on together, it's amazing how much I can see how much I've grown. And to be able to even hear that is quite scary because I'm like, "Oh yeah, I do all that stuff now."
So, where do you wanna start? So tell us a little bit about that. Like, you've already just reflected in quite a deep manner with your career journey. Maybe if you can even bring us back before we met 4 years ago,
Yeah.
and because I actually didn't know you started in trade.
Yeah.
So why don't you give us a little bit of a bit of a journey through the career times, and maybe, I'd love to like, you're at this point now where you're very clear
Yeah.
on what you do and how you help people and what you believe in terms of that intersection between, religion or faith and business. It's so easy to get that clarity off the back of all of that experience and wisdom.
Yeah.
Maybe if you can give us a bit of a sense of your career journey and maybe some of those little lessons that you got along the way that now, again, seem so obvious, but maybe weren't so apparent at the time.
I think the funny thing was, if I actually go a little bit further back, it started at school, right? So at school, everyone's like, "What do you want to do?" And I'm like, "I'm either going to be a psychologist or a pastor." That was the two things that at school I was like. So faith has always been a massive thing on my journey for me.
Mm,
It's
mm.
always been part of my family life and all that sort of stuff. But then go into year 11, I'm like, I don't know what I want to do, so I can't go into a trade. So I just did year 11 and 12, failed miserably in my TER 33, so just above the asterisk. So I
The
actually got
asterisks. Love it.
so, I didn't get the asterisks, so I was okay.
Yeah.
But then I sat there and went, what do I do? And my family grew up, like when I grew up, my dad was a chef and had lots of career changes, but at the time he owned a pre-press business, which is before it goes to print. It's what they use to make the plates and all that sort of stuff. And I'm
Right.
like, well, I don't really want to do that. So what do I do? But I understood printing. So I could either have been a boilermaker or go into print. And I'm like, I know print, I'll go into that. And so that's where I started at in my trade.
Yeah.
Um, did that for a few years, went to TAFE, school failed, got to TAFE for my apprenticeship and topped the state. So it was just a completely different way of learning for me. It was the practical, hands-on, being in
Yeah.
the room with people,
Yeah.
changed completely what I was doing and how I was doing it. So, especially for boys, you find at school, sitting in a classroom learning
Mm,
from a textbook doesn't always work.
mm.
Whereas when you actually are doing stuff with your hands, kinesthetic, you learn a lot quicker. It makes more sense. And so
Mm.
that's why I was able to top the state. From there, I finished up the trade, moved into digital printing because that was a new and emerging market at the time.
Yeah.
Then I went into advertising because I didn't really want to be sitting in digital print. So I went into advertising as sales, learned how to sell, then went back into digital print as a sales rep, and then moved over into selling Christian camps, which if you ever want to have a real struggle and learn what you're made of in selling, that's a great place to be because you're going up against people who've been going to campsites for 20 years and trying to convince them to come to your campsite.
Yeah.
That's where I really learnt in myself that I'm not a salesperson per se. I'm a more of an account manager. So the relationship with
Mm.
people, I was able to build business through relationship. So it took a really small company that we had from $20,000 to spending $300,000 across all the entire locations for our campsites just by pure relationship. And that's where I started to really
Mm.
realize that people was my skill set. And it didn't matter about my degree so much. It was about how I interacted with people. And that's where I ended up. From there, I ended up where I am today. Remember calling my mate and saying, I'm having a bad day. Just want to have a quick conversation. He's like, just quit your job. And I'm like, dude, what? He's like, come work for me. And I'm like, you're in IT. I know nothing about IT.
Mm.
And then that was the journey where I'm like, fine, I'll come. He's like, I just need your help with risk. I'm like, I don't know anything about that either. He goes, you're not dumb. Like, just come and help. And
Yeah.
so I did. I started working for him, and slowly he started to hand over the finance of the business to me. And as he did that, we went on a journey. I did a little bit of study, um, not to the level most CFOs are, but did a little bit of study. And then he turned me and goes, by the way, we now have a global company and need a CFO, and you're it. And so that was the journey. But the thing throughout that all was I had to look at who I was and reflect on
Mm,
who I was.
mm.
So I remember sitting in that first boardroom and looking at all the people. They've got their degrees, they understand the numbers, they understand all of that sort of stuff. And I'm like, this is like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't know the numbers. I don't understand that stuff. But what I did understand was people. And I remember someone in the boardroom, may have been you or someone else, turned around and said, yeah, but you've got something we don't. You understand people. Um, and so I was able to lean in that. And that's been my strength. And that's been my learning the whole way through. The more I put around people and the more I look at teams, it's about the people. If we put people first, our teams will succeed. If we look at culture of that team and look at how we're leading that team, we find that we actually have a more flourishing team, and then we're able to increase ourselves because we're able to serve everybody in that team. We're able to give them opportunities, take stuff off our plate and give it to them. So that's been some of the biggest learnings for me is how do I, even in places where I don't feel like I should be, how do
Mm.
I build a team around me to carry it so that I can then move on to the next thing and put someone in place of myself? I'm always looking for the out. How do how do I get myself out so that I can actually have a team that's below me that's going to help the business or the ministry for church succeed? Because as we grow those teams, there's people that are sitting on the sidelines that if we encourage them, have better thoughts and structures that they can take. So
And I love that, and it's so fascinating hearing that, when you were talking about how, you got 33 in your TER, and then you went and did a hands-on TAFE, course,
yeah,
and that was the game changer, and, suddenly your marks went from here to here. I was going, "How the heck did you then end up as a chief financial officer?" But and so it's so fascinating. Very clearly, your ability to learn and adapt
yeah.
is obviously exceptional. What's going through my head is, yeah, I definitely agree that it's about helping people flourish, and culture is so important. How, and you will appreciate this question because of your experience as a chief financial officer. What about the numbers? Like, it's all well and good to, be lovely and happy and go, I want to invest in you and all of those things. And you and I both know that money's not everything and numbers
Yeah.
aren't everything. But when people are in the pursuit of running a business, you
Yeah.
do need a level of financial success
Yep.
to continue that business,
So
right?
I think when you're looking at that from a numbers perspective, or for me at least, when I look at it from a numbers perspective, what I've found is when the team succeeds, the numbers succeed. So when
Mm.
the so quite often we look at businesses as my business, right? So I own the business. And so I go, it's my money, it's my business. I have to make sure there's this much money in the bank so that I can get my dividend or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But is what I've found is that when we change that mindset just slightly and we go, what if we look at it from a different perspective and go, I'm now going to steward the business. So the business is to do something bigger than myself. So I look at my community. How can I bless the community? How can I bless the people within my business? All of a sudden, the value proposition of the business isn't just a financial one. It
Mm.
actually becomes long-term people. It becomes long-term community. It becomes not about myself. It becomes about others. And all of a sudden we start to see success change in a different way. I've been reading a book recently, and in that book, it's by David Green, the founder of Hobby Lobby. And one of
Okay.
the things he said was when he started his business, he got it to a certain point and it was all about him, but he had all this debt and he had all this stuff and it was just crushing him.
Yeah.
And he remembers sitting in his office, the phone was ringing. We've all been through this, right? The phone's ringing, suppliers are chasing money. We're all sitting there and it's all just overwhelming. And we're like, I don't know how to do this. And so he was actually hiding under what he says was a mahogany desk with the phone ringing, just going, I don't know what to do anymore.
Mm.
And so in that moment, he cried out to God and he's just like, I just need help. And so he went from being a solo business person to going, God, I need you to come and partner with me on this. And
Yeah.
he said that moment changed him from an ownership mindset to a stewardship mindset. It wasn't about him. It was
Yeah.
about the bigger picture. It was about his employees. It was about how he changed the business to grow it. Now he
Yeah.
has an $8 billion company, 1,000 stores in 50 states in America, something like that, with 50,000 employees, right?
Mm,
So just
mm.
by changing his outlook from purely numbers focused, because we can
Yeah.
all do it. We can all
Yeah.
look at the numbers and go, I want to hit $30 million. So how do I get there? And
Yeah.
how do I make sure I've got all that money in the bank? And we'll take out
Mm.
loans to do it and do all that sort of stuff. His business has no loans against it, has no debt ratios, none of that sort of stuff, because he chose to do it a different way. He chose to look at partnering and stewarding rather than just going, it's about me.
It's so fascinating because, you kind of contrast that to what you were saying before around, we think about it, if it's my money, what am I going to do to get to the dividend? It's so fascinating because there's almost, I was kind of listening to you say that going, oh, yeah, that's the way it needs to be because then everyone's got skin in the game, which means
Yeah.
that everyone will drive forward as compared to those people who I will just say are very happy to go in, clock
Yep.
out, kind of with very little care and responsibility because they know that the salary is going to come in anyway,
Yep.
right? But then you took it to this whole other level of stewardship, and first off, I was going, "Oh no, Jason, I don't know where you're going here." But that story is really compelling.
Yep.
Tell me, because also the other thing that you've just come into is talking about God, godly wisdom,
Yep.
and the power of that. You kind of warmed into it. You were using bless the community, bless the people, all the rest of
Yeah.
it. Was this man? Did you give me his name and I forgot?
David Green.
David, you did. Was David Green religious prior to this moment?
Yeah, so he grew up in from the story. I don't know him personally. I'd love to sit down and have a conversation with him though.
Yeah.
Um, but from the story, he grew up in a Christian household, and
Yeah.
his family would be involved in church and stuff. So yeah,
And he was under the table, hiding from the heaviness and the phone calls,
yeah,
and said, "Help me."
mm, yeah. He literally got to a point where he was like, "Can you like?" We've all like anyone that has a business, right? You've been in that moment where you're looking at your bank account. And this is the way I think about it. You're sitting there, you're clicking that button, refresh, right? Just in the hope that
Yeah.
the bank account will be like, yes, I've got an extra $100,000 because I can pay the wages now, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like you're literally
Yeah.
sitting there in that panic state
Yeah.
going, how do I get this in? Or you're sending that email again for the fifth time saying, hey, can
Mm,
you please pay? Like I
mm,
need you to pay because I need the money in the
yeah.
bank. Um, and we've been there. We may not have sat under the desk, but we might have gone out. Someone might have gone outside and screamed and yelled, or gone for a walk, or gone and had a cigarette. However you deal with it,
Yeah. Yeah.
we all feel that pressure.
Yeah.
And this was his way of getting to the very bottom of who he was and going, I've done this on my own. I've come to the end of who I am. And so now what do I have left? And so luckily for him, he had his faith in God, and
Mm,
that's what he lent on. Now, it might not be for me, it's a faith in God. For him, it's a faith in God. For someone else, it could be something different, right?
yeah.
But there's that thing when we get to the end of ourself, what is left? And then how do we then rebuild from that to see the business succeed, to see, and not just think about the business today, because that's
Yeah.
what we most think. How do we get to
Yeah.
today? To
Yeah.
think about the business. What's it going to have? What's the impact of my business and my legacy going to be in 100 years? Will it be around?
Yeah.
And so when we start to think outside of ourselves, all of a sudden it shifts again, right? Because it's not just, hey, how can it bless me today? How can
Mm,
it bless my kids, the generations of my kids? And then how do I set up a structure that I make sure the right person is in the right role, not just because they have my name?
yeah.
Did that answer the question?
Yeah, it did. And it's made me think, so when you do. when you're coaching people and when you're, talking to people either in business or in the church context, um, I'm curious about because then you've got this tension of the now and the
Yeah.
future. So, when you talk about legacy and, 100 years from now, I can imagine that someone in that real panic state is going, Jason, I don't care about legacy and I don't care about 100 years from now because I need to get through
Yeah.
today. So I'd love to hear when you were talking to people one on one, how do you get, I imagine that comes up, that tension comes up. I'm curious about those conversations. What are their challenges? Like, how do they verbalize those challenges to you? And then what's your advice for them?
Yeah, I think the simple thing is when someone comes to you in the panic state and we get to have that actual unfiltered conversation, because a lot of people like to keep their guard up, right? I've got everything together. I'm completely fine. No, you're not. Let's just look at you for 2 seconds and we can tell. Um,
Oh, it's confronting.
oh, oh, it's amazing what we think we can hide. And then when you look at someone's facial expression or, the way they're sitting in their chair or stuff, and you're like, you're not okay. Um, we don't talk about the legacy stuff because there's stuff that we need to deal with right now.
Mm,
And the right now, we've got to break it down. What's that old saying? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
mm,
We don't take it on straight away. And so depending on what people are going through, we go, hey, what's happening today? What can we look at today? Let's just, and you taught me this. What's on your calendar? What's your calendar look like? Because it's very simple. Let's
yeah,
make some margin. Let's make some room. And let's take some time in your day to actually just ground yourself. So
yeah,
again, for me, that's reading my Bible, that's praying. For
yeah,
someone else, it might be taking 10, 15 minutes to meditate.
yeah.
And it's about actually just putting yourself outside of your current situation so that you can turn around and go, hey, I'm still human. I'm still a person. Because is what happens is we get so wrapped up in what we do, we
Mm,
forget who we are.
mm,
Our job doesn't define us or shouldn't define us. It generally does.
yeah.
And we have to come back to that state of who am I? And so when you come back to that state of who you are, you can then figure out what's important to you. And then you can look at stuff a lot clearer. And a clean desk always helps. Make sure your desk is clean at the end of every day and the start of every day, because then
Nicely
you
said.
walk in with you walk
Clean.
into a clean mind.
It's interesting because you actually said that when you went through your career journey and you said, actually, the reason why I was able to do that is because I knew who I was.
Yeah.
That's actually a really hard question to answer. Like
Yeah.
and to be perfectly honest with you, I don't even think I was aware enough. And I don't know if this is like a naivety thing or an ego thing, but I don't reckon I started asking myself that question until I was late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
Um, And again, I don't know if that was just, lack of awareness. I don't know if it was ego, naive, whatever it was. But and then when you finally realize that's the question you need to ask, it's a little bit, you can be faced with a little bit of an existential crisis, right? Because there's no playbook for that.
Correct.
So I would love to know how did you, why did that come to mind for you? Or how did you know who you were through that journey, which clearly grounded you and allowed you just to keep taking each step forward and keep learning and growing?
I think the honest thing is it was my faith, but then I've been very lucky that in all aspects of my life, I've had people around me who have encouraged me, who have seen things in myself or in me that I
Mm,
haven't seen in myself. Right. I was
mhm,
listening to a guy, this morning on Instagram, was flicking through something, and he's a coach in the US, and he said, so often we're always looking for the answer to the question, but is what we don't realize is that we have a wife who's sitting there telling us something, but we'll go to our mates, they say the exact same thing. We're like, yeah, that's awesome. But he goes, having your wife beside you, God put her in your life to give you, because she's listening better than you, to give
mhm.
you the answers, right? So
Yeah.
for me, a lot of it has been through my wife. She's
Yes.
brought wisdom and stuff when I haven't been listening, or she's seen
Mm,
things in me. I have the privilege of working for my best mate. And part of the reason he brought me on into the company was because he saw something in me that I didn't see myself. But the
Mm,
other side to that too is, and this is where, I love the work that we've done. It's having someone like you in my corner who from the very first moment is, I see more in you than you see in yourself, Jason. So who's that for everyone that's listening? Who's that for you? Who's that person that you've got that's actually taking you on a journey and saying, hey, there's more in you than you think. But I'm lucky because I've had faith, and faith has always been that underlying foundation for me. So I
yeah.
can always go back to that. So
Yes.
what's that one thing that's been, look at your life and go, hey, what's that one thing that's been constant throughout my life? There's
Yeah.
always one thing. For me, if
Mm.
it's faith, for someone else, it could be something else, but there's always one thing. And that's the start of pulling the string to unraveling who you actually are.
And I love that we've got there because I'm sure when you were back doing your TAFE degree, working in the printers press or in the printer industry,
Yeah.
that you'd be on a podcast talking about business and faith, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I would love to know, how has your faith helped you in business? I would love to know, how has that helped?
How, how deep do you want to go?
As deep as you want.
Uh,
Let's
how
go
honest
there.
you, how honest do you want me to be? One of the
Very.
great things, and I don't want to sound preachy, so I'm just talking from my own personal
Yeah.
experience and
Yeah.
who I am. Um, but one of the things in my faith circle is we have the Holy Spirit. So before a meeting, like before I walk into a meeting where I've got to present or I've got to do something, or even when I was in sales, like I remember sitting there going, oh man, I'm not the greatest salesman, but Lord, please help me. And the Holy Spirit would prompt me or guide my words or whatever. And so, we often talk about discernment. So knowing the right thing at the right time,
Mm-hmm.
or knowing when to walk away. A lot of people will call it intuition. I'm walking down an alleyway and instead of going straight where I wanted to, I turned left. I don't know why I turned left, but
Yeah.
I just did. So for me, that's the Holy Spirit, which convicts me, which
Yes.
guides and leads me. And I think for me, that's where faith has played such a big thing.
Yeah.
Sitting there and looking at numbers and going, I've sent out the same email, but what can I say differently? Or
Yeah.
how do I pick up a phone and talk to someone or whatever it is? And just actually realizing that it's not all on my shoulders, because we
Mm,
love to take it on our shoulders, right? Look, I've got big, broad shoulders. Let me carry the world.
yes.
Um, but knowing that I can't and being okay with that and then looking for help,
Mm,
actually putting my hand up and going, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here. Hey, I don't have the answers. Can someone help me? And I think in leadership, in running a business, in ministries, whatever it is you do, if you can
mm,
actually be humble enough to turn around and go, I don't know, you're
yeah.
going to get more buy-in and you're going to actually end up further down the path than you would if you tried to do it all on your own. There's that old saying, leadership's like an island, because when you're at the top, you carry everything. I think that can be true, but I think if you choose, and it's hard, right? Because it's a choice. Um,
Yeah.
if you choose to get peers around you or to get a coach or a mentor or whatever it happens to be that works for you,
Mm,
and get someone to speak into your life and say, hey, I actually don't know what I'm doing. They
mm,
only have to be a step further down the path than you two, right?
yeah.
Don't have to be 20 years down the path. Helps if they do because they've had 20 years experience. But
Yeah.
as long as they're a step in front of you, they'll be able to help you as long as you're willing to surrender and be humble enough to say, I don't have this all together.
Yeah. I want to. Yeah, absolutely. And I think about that mahogany table moment
Yep.
for, and I just think, gosh, that's that moment of absolute, um, you know, humility,
Yeah.
surrender. Like, I don't have this, and
Yeah.
there's this mahogany table is not letting me hide as much as I want to hide, right? But I want to come back to what you said around, really God guides you. Like
Yep.
every step of the way, if I wanted to go straight and I turned left, I trust in the fact that God made me turn left, right? Or
Yep.
helped me decide that that was the right thing to do. I don't know if this is an appropriate question, but I'm going to trust that it's okay to ask you this. Has God ever done you wrong?
No.
Okay,
The
tell me
only time,
about that.
so the only time God's done me wrong, or I perceived done me wrong, is when
Yeah.
I've been stupid and ignored what he said.
Oh, can you give us an example of that? And that, I tell you what, I'm trying to be a little bit provocative, of course,
Yeah, of course.
but I'm also thinking, I hear stories about people who do believe in God and then something happens and they go, nah, what's the point?
Yeah.
And so I'm really curious about your experience through that. Um, yeah, because, yeah.
So God has never done me wrong. I've seen a lot of bad things happen and question God why.
Mm,
So my entire life I've had asthma and I am on medication that most people can't get. So even my specialist, he's like, Jason, you're the top 1% of 1% when it comes to asthma. Like it just is what it is. And
mm,
is what can happen is I remember a couple of years ago where I was actually in hospital. I couldn't breathe. I had this cough. I had 5 nurses around me, 3 doctors and the head of ICU all standing around me going, like, you're either going to live or die here.
mm,
And I remember there's a verse in the Bible where it talks about to live is Christ and to die is gain. So if I live in this moment, then I have a plan and a purpose that is still needing to be fulfilled on this earth. If
mhm,
I die, then I get to go to be in eternity with Christ. Um,
mm.
so either way, I'm good. Like, but in that moment, the
Yeah,
natural side of me started to freak out because I'm like, I'm hearing these doctors talk and go, you can live. Like this guy's either going to live or die.
yeah,
Obviously, I lived. There's a surprise ending to the story. But I remember in that moment, like fear started to grab me and I'm like, God, like I've got 3 kids. I've got a wife. Like I've got all this sort of stuff. What
yeah,
the heck? Like,
yeah,
are you really there? Are you really who you say you are? And then I had one moment of clarity and it was, God, your word says for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. So if I live today, it's because you have a plan and a purpose for me. If I die
mm,
today, then I get to be in eternity with you. So give me your peace that surpasses all understanding. And my wife will tell you this, like in that moment, even the doctors, they all just looked at me and went, something's changing. I don't know what it is, but something's changed. And
yeah,
this, like
right,
my body and my countenance changed completely.
yeah,
Um, Now I was in hospital for a week after that.
yeah,
They couldn't figure out what was wrong, all that sort of stuff.
mm,
But there is those moments. I mean, even you and I were talking earlier in the week in our normal catch up and we were talking about our house. Excuse me. And how we were given notice to move out. Man,
yeah,
I got cranky. I'm like, God, like we were going to be here for 6 years more. What the heck? Like, what are
yes,
you doing? How come you haven't come through? Um, but then we're able to look back and go, hey, but he's giving it to, he's kicking us out so that he can put his family in. We've seen people in the
mm,
church that have had their partners die from
mm,
terrible diseases.
mm,
And you go, man, like that person was like a bright spark on the earth, like one of the loveliest people you could ever know.
yeah,
What the heck?
yeah,
And you can be angry at God for that. And then you
okay,
go, like, I've prayed for healing. I prayed for healing.
yeah,
Why didn't you heal?
yeah,
And I think the thing that I had to come to a realization in that of myself was healing happened, but just not in the way I thought it was going to happen. Because that person's now in eternity with Christ,
mm,
new
mm,
body, no sickness, you
yes,
know, getting to be in the presence of God
yeah,
um, in a way that just I can't comprehend because I've never been there, right?
yeah, yeah,
But does that mean that the person on this side of eternity isn't suffering? No, but they have a great support system around them. They've got great friends around them, and
yes,
even just watching them go on their journey, like you watch them and you're like, man, they're so in love with God right now. So I think yes,
mm,
do we get disappointed with God? Yep, 100%.
yeah, okay,
Um, do we look at the numbers and go, God, like I was meant to hit $30 million and I haven't
yeah,
yet? 100%. Like that's the practical side of it, right? Like
yeah,
pray for the business. I wanted the most successful business in the world, but coming back to that, what's the work we have to do in and of ourselves?
mm,
Because our character will only carry us so far. We have to continually work on it. So competency, our degrees and everything will get us to this point.
yeah,
Our
yeah,
character then needs to carry us. But even with our character, if we're not continually working on that,
yeah,
you know, if some of that stuff had happened to me 10 years ago, I would have flipped tables. I would have, walked out of the church, and I would have come back to the church eventually, but I would have had my complete hissy fit. It's the same with our jobs.
Yeah.
Like, what is it we need to be learning and growing in to sustain and grow the business or whatever?
Yeah.
And if we've gotten to the point where we're the big fish in the small pond, where do we need to move so we're now the small fish in the big pond so that we can
Mm.
continue to grow?
Okay, I'm curious. You just said something that I want to just get a solid answer for anyone who's listening to this. So you said, had that happened to you 10 years ago,
Yep.
completely different response.
Yep.
Throwing tables, what the heck? This is, this was not my plan. So what the heck is going on?
Yep.
If I was listening and if I were one of your coaching clients
Yep.
or mentees or listening to you on stage, and I would say, I don't want to wait 10 years to learn that lesson. What would you tell me to do or think differently so I could shortcut that 10-year growth
And
period for you? What's the shortcut? The cheats code.
the cheat code is simply this: find the thing that makes you most uncomfortable, and then work on making that become comfortable.
Oh. So what was that for you?
Um, it was believing in myself.
Okay.
That was it. It was trusting that God had a plan and a purpose for me, and that
Mm.
after having listened to so many people for 30, almost 40 years saying, "You've got these gifts," actually going, "You know what? I do." I remember a couple of years ago, we had a guy come to church, and he was praying for me specifically for something, and he just
Yeah.
gave me this word. He just spoke life into me, basically, um, trying to keep it in actual lingo that people understand, not church lingo. But he spoke life into me, and he said, "Jason, you've got to stop doubting yourself. You have to believe in yourself." And so knowing yourself and knowing who you are, and knowing, like, pulling on that string, continue to pull on that string and find out who you are.
Mhm.
When you know who you are and what your foundational beliefs are,
Yeah.
you can conquer anything, because you have to have a cornerstone. How we go back into ancient times when they were building houses, they always had one true piece, and it was the cornerstone. Then everything
Yeah.
else was plumbed off that.
Mm. Mm.
So that cornerstone set whether the building was going to be square or not. If they didn't lay that properly, everything else fell over. So we have to go back and go, what's that thing? What are those things about myself, who I am? And if we start with the uncomfortable, then
Mm.
we go, why does that make me uncomfortable? Because is there a truth to it
Yeah.
or not? So it's about being curious. I think we have to go back to that child curiosity.
Yeah. Big time. I've just written you. Something's just sparked in me, and as much as we talk regularly and we've worked together for a very long time, I've actually never thought this until this conversation. Which you're probably going to roll your eyes and go, Alana, that's what I've been trying to tell you this whole time. Uh, but you've just talked about the importance of the cornerstone.
Yeah.
And on my piece of paper here, I've got that in the bottom left-hand corner.
Yeah.
And then we've talked about faith.
Yeah.
And for you, faith is through God,
Yeah.
right? And on my notebook, that's top right-hand corner.
Yep.
When I hear you talking, that makes so much sense to have the grounding and the foundation in the cornerstone.
Yeah.
And then have the thing that's just so far beyond you, it's intangible, you can't understand it, but it's that faith. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't really have a question with this, but it's just something that's just like light bulbed in my head.
Yeah.
Is that intentional? Like, tell me what your opinion is or perspective is around that.
I think it's like a tent. Right? You remember going to school camp and they had the old school tents where it was like literally two poles, and it
Yeah.
had the ropes coming off the side.
Yeah.
If you put up one pole and you had a rope coming off it, would your tent work?
No.
No, it'd fall over, right?
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, when you put up the other pole and you have the other string coming off it, or the other guy rope coming off it, all of a
Yeah.
sudden you have this structure, right?
Yeah.
So the two tensions of faith and the cornerstone, they are the same thing, but they do create this tension in my life for me to have something to walk along and to travel along that thing to be able to get to where I need to go.
So hang on, what do you mean they're the same thing? So then my
Almost,
diagram was wrong.
no, your diagram is right because your cornerstone is your founding principle, right?
Yeah.
So for me, everything that everything that I do and I come from is my faith. But my
Yeah,
faith is
okay.
also the thing that's in front of me that I'm looking at and I'm
Mm,
going, how do I become a better person? How do I become a better human being? How do I love people more? What is it that I need to? So it's almost like a mirror,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Except my mirror is Jesus. And
Yeah,
so
wow.
I'm looking at the perfecter and going,
Yes.
how do I become more like him?
Yeah.
At the same time, it's the cornerstone because it's the foundation of everything I'm building from.
Yes.
So if your values are kindness, integrity, um, wisdom and knowledge, and they're your foundational pieces, okay,
Yeah.
so let's put those flat. Let's make those our cornerstone and
Yeah.
let's build from that. So what does kindness
Mm,
look like? What does
mm,
integrity look like?
yeah.
I love curiosity at the moment. I'm trying to become more like a child. What does curiosity look like in your life? So even if you're sitting in your office and you're looking at those numbers and you go, yeah, it's just black and white on a page. What happens if you start to ask different questions and you become more curious about it, or you become more curious about the people in your team?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're not just looking at black and white. You're starting to add color because you're
Mm,
going, hey, I actually want to get to know you for who you are.
mm,
What did you do? Because we all do it, right? Walking, how was your weekend? Yeah, it was good. Great. Water cooler done. But what
yeah.
if you actually took 5 minutes to go and sit with your 2IC or someone in your team who, I heard this the other day, instead of just sitting with your team, who's at the bottom of the rung,
Mm,
right? So as a CFO, who's at the bottom of the ladder in your team, go and sit with them and actually go, hey, I want to get to know you, but what do you think we can do to make the
mm,
business, the position better? Because guess what? They're going to be thinking and seeing things that we just don't see because we're looking at this the whole time. So if we
yeah.
get curious, I think we can expand our horizons, and we can learn things that we never thought of.
For example, so for you, faith is God,
Yeah.
right? And that's very clear. Again, I'm sort of curious about what are the other. I believe, that at the very top, the kind of C-suite leaders that we're talking about, board directors, all the rest of it, you got to have something, right?
100%.
Because those mahogany table moments, they do happen. And, many people choose faith and they choose God, and that's where they go to,
Yeah.
right? That's their definition of faith. Do you ever come across people that have other definitions of faith?
Yeah. Success.
Success?
Yeah. Success is that people can put that at the top
Yeah,
and
okay.
go, that's what I'm aiming for.
Yep,
That's what I want to be. I want to be successful, whatever way that looks like.
yep.
Um, but even that, you've got to pull it back down to that cornerstone. What does that actually look like? What does success look like? If you're looking at C-suite too, it's I want to be a better person. I want to see the world impacted. I want to um I want to go out and do good.
Mm,
I want to go out and I want to earn as much money as I can so that I can take my money and then go on a bike trek around India and raise more money so that I can then go and
yes.
help the people who have less than me.
Yeah,
Um, so it's that sort of stuff. It doesn't always have to be religion. It
yeah.
can just be being a good person. So it's about finding that for yourself. What is that thing for you?
And it kinda comes my brain's just exploded a little bit. I'll see if I can keep it succinct. It's a little bit like coming back to that idea of stewardship that you talked
Yeah.
about when you were talking about that mahogany table moment.
Yeah.
You're saying that, success can be that kinda North Star-ish thing, but typically there's a definition. There's maybe a, really tangible definition of what success is, but typically there's something that sits behind that,
So
and
this
that's
to make it a bit clearer, to
yeah,
simplify it down, because that's what you've taught me to do. What's your why?
yeah,
Why do you do what you do?
yeah,
What is it? And when you know your why, when you understand why you're doing what you're doing, all of a sudden, everything else will come. Again, it's just another part of that string.
Mm, mm,
Why is it important for me to be successful? Why is it important for me to do this? Why
mm.
isn't it? Why? We ask that question so much as a 2-year-old, you
Yeah.
know, 3 kids, you've got kids. I remember those moments. Why, daddy? Because I said
Yeah.
so. No, but
Yeah.
why? W- Let's ask that question as adults. Let's
Yeah.
ask that question in our business. Why are we doing this way? Why is
Mm,
it important to me? Because if it's not important to you, then you're not going to steward it. You're
yeah.
not going to do it well. So to answer the question more succinctly, what's your why?
Yeah. And again, that's one of those questions. I really love the analogy that the string, the pulling the string, because again, I think what's your why is another one of those questions that people will shy away from because it's a little
Yeah.
bit, it's not even just uncomfortable. It's so big, people don't know where to start. But I like this idea that if you just kind of pull at the string where
Yeah.
there's a little bit of discomfort and then, it'll eventually come.
Yeah.
Um, One of the other thoughts, to be honest with you, Jason, that I had, and I think this is a part of the reason that we're able to be in a position to have this conversation, and now why you do go out and coach and mentor and speak about the intersection between business and God, is that many of us have had faith and have had God in our lives when we were younger.
Yeah.
And then I do think we get caught up in this idea of material success,
Yeah.
and time is a limitation. But
Yeah.
I feel like, and I said this to you a lot, that when you get to the really senior levels,
Mm.
there are a lot of people that are faith-based,
Yeah.
that are looking to have a conversation with someone about God, who are looking for someone to not even just have a coaching conversation, right,
Yeah.
with someone like me or any of the other coaches that are out there. There are many of them. They wanna have, I think you call them unfiltered conversations, where
Yeah.
they can actually, and I don't know, maybe you can tell us, where they can actually say, like, "This is what's gone on, and I feel bad about it, and I don't like it." And they could have that kinda conversation with someone like me, but then what they can't do with me, but they could do with you is say, "And I just don't know where God is here.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't know what to do with it." And they want to explore that through the lens of not only where is God in all of that, but they want to
Mm.
explore that through the lens of, how does this fit in with my faith? How does
Yeah.
this fit in with my community and my family? Um, te am I right?
Yeah. 100% right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so tell me then a little bit about what do you mean by unfiltered conversations? Like, how do they go?
So it's funny because it depends on the person, but we look at coaches, we look at psychologists, we look at counselors, and we look at pastors, and we have this idea that we have to have a mask on in that conversation. I have to act a certain way.
Yeah.
But when I have conversations with people, I'm like, I actually don't care. You could tell me whatever you want to tell me. And you could tell me that you're the most terrible person in the world and that 5 minutes ago you were swearing or yelling at your kids or whatever. And I'm not going to judge you for it. Now, obviously, there's legal bounds, all that
Yeah.
sort of stuff that we have to abide by. So, but you've had a bad day and you want someone to say, hey, man, like, actually, this week has really sucked. And these are all the things that have gone on. I don't know where God is at it in it. And I actually just don't know what to do. Cool. I'm not going to judge you for it.
Mm,
Not that you judge me when we have conversations or any of that sort of
I
stuff,
know what
but
you mean.
there's a perception of how people are going to react and interact with us in certain environments. And I was talking to a leader the other day and we are just having a conversation about something. And as we were talking, he's like, Jason, I love having conversations with you because you're the only person I can truly be real with. Like you understand, you get me. And I'm like, yep, dude, I'm in business. I'm in the church world. I completely understand where you're coming from. And you know what? Sometimes people just suck.
Yeah, wow.
um, and being able to bring that real world experience into those conversations,
Yes.
but
Yes.
also have faith behind it and go, hey, but
Mhm.
you know what? There's a reason you're here. And if there's not, like if your time is done, then let's figure out how to transition you from that.
Yeah.
But let's actually take a minute just to breathe, you know?
Mm.
And
Mm,
so that's the way that happens is just and sometimes I have to share I have to be, it's one of those words at the moment that is sort of everyone's like, "Ugh," but we need to bring it back a little bit, is vulnerable, right?
mm,
If I
mm.
can be vulnerable with them and go, "Hey, you know what? I'm not perfect either," because we
Yes.
have this perception that our leaders are perfect,
Yeah.
and so we have to carry that mantle and just go, "Hey, you know what? In this room, there's no perfection.
Yeah.
We're all broken. We're all screwed up. We all make mistakes. So let's just be real." If
Yeah.
I can be real with them, then it opens up that door for them to actually go, "Oh, I can actually speak to him about, hey, I was just hiding in the bathroom having a cry or hiding under my desk and being like, I don't know what to do." So it's about creating that space and letting people truly see that they're valued,
Mm,
um, that they are loved, which is a weird thing to say, but that they are loved for who they are, not what they
mm,
do.
mm.
Um, and that they have a purpose. We all have a purpose on this earth. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter if you're the cleaner or you're the C-suite or the CEO or whatever. Like you have a purpose, and when we all come together, and we all work together, we then can create a better thing. But as that person at the top of the organization, sometimes you need someone to actually just be able to sit in a room with and cry, yell, scream, and say, "Hey, I don't have this all together," and that be okay. And that's where, for me, that's where I'm able to help people.
And I think, what's been mind blowing and assuring for you is you've had some conversations with some heavy hitters, like very, very, very senior heavy hitters.
Yeah.
So, because it would be easy to listen to parts of our conversation and go, oh, those are some really nice fluffy words. It all sounds really nice.
Yeah.
But that's not going to work because my business is very money driven and all the rest of it. Like I know some of the people that you've spoken with
Yeah.
and they are the heavy hitters, heavy hitting money people, right?
Yeah.
And they are having these vulnerable conversations with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I personally am so grateful that you know you've got the confidence to go out and do this work,
Mm.
that your journey has led you here, because I
Yeah.
think the world needs it.
Yeah.
Because I imagine, and you and I talk about faith all the time in our conversations.
Yeah.
But I am not an expert. I am not a pastor, right?
Yeah.
So I talk and I can talk about my own experience and my own beliefs around faith and God and all of those things. But I am
Mm.
not a pastor.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not an expert too either, right? Like, not
but you, but
perfect.
you, but you are a pastor, so you have
Yes.
expertise, right?
Correct. Yes.
And I can just imagine the same person, like we could work with the same person, but with you,
Yeah.
there's just that extra level of, you talked about being seen.
Yeah.
You can see people in a different way.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so important. Like that, when we are talking about these really heavy hitter senior people, there
Mm.
are, like you said, there are very few people that they will allow themselves to be seen because there's a lot of responsibility at those levels.
Yeah.
And so it's so special that you provide them the space to just kind of derobe in a not inappropriate way and be seen,
Yeah.
and to be seen by someone who knows, and to have that, be able to sit in that non-judgmental space, I
Mm.
just imagine is invaluable.
Yeah. It's great. And it's, for me, it's the greatest privilege on the planet.
So I want to ask, we got to wrap up, unfortunately. I know we can and we quite often do talk for hours. Um, what I'm hoping that has happened as a result of this conversation is that there are some people who maybe have not felt comfortable talking about faith in the business world,
Mm.
right? That they've listened to your story and gone, wow, Jason can go out and talk about God and can talk
Mm.
about faith, and he's successful and he's had this
Mm.
incredible successful career journey and it's still going. Um, what's possible for me. Maybe I can talk about, going to church on Sunday without
Yeah.
fear of judgment and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to someone who's kind of listening to this and and you kind of triggering a little bit of hope in them? What would you say to them?
I would honestly say, just do it. Be yourself. Be your true self. And if that's talking about faith and just being honest about who you are, just do it. The worst thing someone's going to say is, I don't want to hear it, thanks. But most people, if you're respectful of them, they will be respectful of you. The amount of
Mm,
times I've gone and prayed for someone or done something, just said, hey, can I pray for you? The answer is usually yes.
wow.
So if we're respectful and we're willing to listen, people will listen to us. But when you know your why and you know who you are, it will
Mm,
spill out of you automatically. So find your true self
mm.
and everything else will flow out of that.
Wow. That's incredible, Jason. If I'm listening to this and I want to learn more about you, if I want to contact you and reach out and learn more about what you do and how you help,
Yep.
how would be the best way for people to reach you?
On the website at the moment, and the website address is jasonmcdougall.co. Jason, JasonMcDougall.co.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. This has just been an incredible conversation. And despite the fact we do talk regularly, I have learned so much. I have gained so much wisdom and just some more insight around, how do I move forward? Even through this conversation, I felt more confident moving forward. So thank you so much for your time and being so generous with everything that you've shared. This has been wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Eleanor. I really appreciate your time as well.
And what a great chat with Jason, which leads us straight into our listener question. And if you want to submit a listener question, you can now email us at realmathofbusiness at gmail.com, or you can leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify and we'll hopefully get to it in the future. This week's listener question for this episode is from Andrew. Hey there, really enjoying the podcast. It's been great while doing chores around the house. You've worked with a lot of different people. What are some traits or habits that you have noticed that you find in successful people best, Andrew? Well, Andrew, first of all, I love that you're doing chores around the house. I'm pleased that I've been able to provide some entertainment and maybe a little bit of, useful advice in that process. The guests that we've had on have been incredible. Um, and actually, when you think about it, I know they talk about these intangible, they say, you should outsource all your chores. I outsource a reasonable amount, but there are certain chores that I don't outsource. The benefit, and this is going to your question around habits and traits, is that when you're doing chores, you allow your mind to wander a bit. And what it does is it puts your brain in that state where it's very calm, it's doing something that you don't have to use any brain power to, and that's when the great ideas come. So, in terms of traits or habits that I find in successful people, they create the space for those pings of great ideas to come, whether that be doing something menial like chores or whether that's going for a walk, a bushwalk, a surf, a swim, whatever it is. So, put your brain in that really nice, relaxed state where it's not doing things. And for you, Andrew, it may be chores. Keep doing that. Yeah. The worst you can do, the flip side of that, and the trap that many of us fall into is we've got to be busy and productive all the time. We've got to be thinking. You're just not letting your brain have those super ideas that actually are the ones that change the game. Some other habits, I guess the first thing actually is they have habits. They live their life by design. They do not just float around. Sometimes they look like it, and this is kind of the trap. They look like they're just floating around and their success just happens to them. No, actually, all of them have habits. Some of them might not know that they are habits, but they are things that they do habitually that make them successful. What I will say is 9 out of 10, they're morning people, but even those people that profess to not be morning people, they are very protective of their time in the morning. So quite often they will get up, at 5 o'clock, some even at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they will do the things that they know get them at their best. So it might be their exercise, it might be some yoga, it might be their journaling, it might be some meditation, it might be that's when they do their podcast or their professional development. They are morning people, and what they recognize is that in the morning we've got less chance of distraction. Yeah, so that's when, everyone's still asleep, and that's why it's hard to be a morning person at the beginning, is that everyone's still asleep. But what that means is this like amazing space that you've got to do the things that make you at your best. So what I would say is, morning, be a morning person and protect your morning. With respect to the living by design concept or idea that I shared previously, I think that talks to, again, it kind of looks a little bit effortless, but typically what you find in successful people is they have a vision, they have values, and they have goals. And I know sometimes, you might have heard those concepts when you walk into a bookstore and you see that big personal development section, or in a workplace workshop where, they've peddled in someone to talk about these sort of esoteric states. And quite frankly, many of those things are not very successful as practices. But what you will find is that in successful people, they will always have vision, values, and goals, because that becomes why they do what they do, how they do what they do, and the what. The goals is the what they do now, because we know that the opportunities are endless. You can't do everything at once. So what you need, the goals, is so you can kind of timeline out or sequence out the things that you're going to focus on that allows you to live your values and achieve your vision. So that's that. They live by their calendar. Again, comes part of their, not living by default and just floating in and out. They're quite intentional about where they spend their time, and quite often they use their calendar as a tool to do that. And finally, they are fit and healthy, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Again, they do that with intention. They invest in their physical health. So they'll make sure they've got a trainer, or they go to the gym, or they've got a running track that they like. They will invest in their mental fitness. So they will speak to psychologists or counselors, or they will meditate, do the things that make them well. And they will also invest in their emotional and spiritual growth, which, depending on what that looks like for them, but they will just find the time and space to take care of those parts of themselves. I could probably go on forever, but as I was preparing for this, Andrew, I reckon I synthesize it into those key ones, because, habits are only helpful if you actually do them. And if you are starting out in a bit of a habit journey, you definitely don't want to try and do all of them at once. Just pick the ones that you think will be most useful for you, that sound the most intriguing to you. And once you've got those in the bag, you can go on to the next one. So I hope that's helped, Andrew. And I want to thank you for listening to The Real Math of Business with Alena Bennett. If you liked this episode, remember to subscribe for more content and stay on top of the real math of business. I've been Alena Bennett. Thank you for listening.